all this time touring, you've toured the world, right? But United States, do you ever remember that one day, maybe it was a day off, or maybe it was before the gig or after the gig and traveling or something like that, where you just kind of felt like, wow, if there's anything that's like a slice of Americana, I just saw it or experienced it?
I don't even know if it was specifically that as much as the first time we ever toured in England, and it was the first day that we got to come back to the United States. And I've said this a million times, I've never had a greater appreciation. I never was, growing up, I wasn't unpatriotic, I didn't hate America, but I never was so, I didn't have the country pride that everybody else had. I wasn't like the flag flying, whatever.
Toby Keith.
Yeah, but it wasn't until I had ever experienced being out of this country and then getting to come back to America and having I think we had a layover in, it might have been Dallas Fort Worth, which is kind of a hub, but just seeing stuff again and food with salt in it and seeing American people and American girls and all the things that I hadn't seen in so long was crazy. It was it felt like that airport layover was like someone giving me just a minute of bliss, and because it was amazing. Because not to say that I don't enjoy the rest of the world, but I was unprepared, and I think everybody is the first time you leave the country for how different things can be, especially when you're touring in a van, in England and playing small places, because that shit can be a lot harder than doing it over here. It's not until you get to a certain level in other countries, it's a lot harder to tour. So our first time through as a support band in England, touring in a van, playing in rooms that were so small that we had to put the drum kit next to us again, but doing it in a capacity where you have none of the convenience. Because when you do that and your kids in America, you still have, Del Taco and all this stuff. You have your conveniences, and you're on the road, and you're you have now you have a cell phone that works, all that stuff. But regardless whether you have that kind of stuff, it's still you have your conveniences. And when you don't have any of that, and you're playing these tiny places, and things are miserable, and you're in a Sprinter van with no oxygen in it, no windows, it's a real dark experience. So coming back to America for the first time, I fell in love with the U.S. And every time I've done it since, I love the United States. No matter how happy I am, I love touring abroad. I love England particularly. We have a great, rapport with in terms of the audience. I always love America more than anything when I come back home.
Is there a country that you still haven't synced in yet with? You're you love it. You want to be a part of it. You want to just blend in. Germany.
Yeah. Can't get it together there. Regardless of how well the shows go, I have some, and I always make the joke that I call all of Europe Germany. I go, oh, we're going back to Germany. They're like, Andy, there's a lot of countries that are in. Nope, German tour. That's all it is. Because the first couple times you rolled through there, they did not give a shit. Just couldn't connect. And regardless of how well we do over there, there's still something in me that just I'm cautious on stage. There's some connection stuff that I was never really to get. My particularly in the early days of our shows, in club days, we'd only play 5 songs. The rest was just me giving speeches, very opinionated thing, When we did a tour supporting, the first tour we supported in the States, the only one that we ever got to do because nobody would take us on tour was the last from first to last tour they ever did. It was Sleeping with Sirens, us, and then we were the bands that were treated like shit on the tour, and but we were the people that were bringing all the people to the shows, and then they'd all leave, but we were treated like babies and idiots. And except from first to last were nice guys, but the other bands on the tour, I won't mention them, but they have now not done so well, or they are done, in fact, as bands. And anyway, which is sort of ironic, considering the fact that me and Kellen have sort of done considerable amount in our careers. And we actually done Warped Tour. We're joking about that tour this summer, but we would play maybe a total of 4 songs, and the rest is just me yelling opinions at people. Just I have some shit to say, and I'm going to say it. And I didn't realize that would only allow for me another 5 minutes to play music. Andy, we have to play some songs here. You can't just yell your opinions at people. Now we headline. Now we'll do an hour and a half, and I don't talk as much as I used to back then because I enjoy playing music. But at the time, it was just so much aggression I had to get out. It would be disingenuous now. I still occasionally go on my little rants, but
stage
at
is
the
therapy.
time I needed to say it.
Stage is therapy for a lot of singers.
Fans get upset. Andy doesn't talk as much because I don't ever want to say something I don't believe in, and I don't want it to become shtick.
Right.
If I'm not feeling it, I don't want to say. There's certain things that it's an unavoidable thing. You're doing it this night after night. There's certain Groundhog's Day elements. There are certain things that I say every single night because in my estimation, it's part of the show. One rolls into the next. If I say, on this tour, before we're doing a Misfits cover in the set, and before that, I say that it's October. I say that, we all grow up loving Halloween, that, being kids that are kind of weird looking, like variations on the words. And then I say, this is a song by the ultimate Halloween band. And that if you come see 3 shows on the tour, you're going to hear me say something very similar to that every single night. I can't go completely off the cuff all the time because I do have, a 50-minute set that I have to keep together. But having said that, in terms of long speeches and stuff, I don't like them to be, like because like bands like Kiss and stuff, Paul Stanley always has like the speech to say that it's been practiced and auditioned.
Sure.
And everything else, but it's not for me.
Well, Billy Joe has them, and
I can't do it. One of the things that the first time I ever saw AFI changed me was just the aggression that they were like. I'd never seen people play like that on stage before. This is like the first Warped Tour I went to, 2001 or something. And I'd never seen them before, but I knew I loved their music, from what I knew of it. I didn't know all their songs, but I knew enough in the set that it was enjoyable. But I'd never seen, because I previously had only seen either old men, dinosaur, like classic rock bands who had shit blow up behind them but didn't move or anything, or old man punk bands like, Social Distortion or something, which, not against them, but there was never a whole lot of stage movement there. So imagine,
right.
An older version of that. So like watching the members of AFI just destroy a small stage area and never stop moving. And Davey never says, he just hears the song name, and if I have something to say, and then just goes to the next one. That was life-changing for me. Because I was like, I don't have to be like, I can just go up there and be genuine, and that's a whole hell of a lot better than being this sort of statuesque, like preconceived person that's going to, I think that's when I lost a lot of the rock star thing, because to me rock star changed then, because now it's like being the Billy Idol style rock star is a lot different, and I would love to do that, but I don't know that I'll ever be able to do that 100% because I just have too many I have too much interest in constantly reminding myself of where I came from or why I do this.
What do you think if you had obviously, you've got to try and say this somehow with some humility, but it's difficult, because what do you think it is that your fans have latched onto you as a performer? What about you?
I'm good at it. I'm good on stage. I mean, I don't need too much humility. I'm a good frontman. I would put my performance up against anyone in my age bracket or the bands that perform today. I'm not the best singer in the world. I sing well enough for our songs. I don't think it's I'm not trying to tell anybody that, like, someone like Kellen is a great singer. I can never sing like him, but I can go on a stage and people want to pay attention to me because I'm good at it, because I spent a lot of time doing that, and I know how to connect with an audience, and I know how to connect with our audience. It's genuine. When I smile on stage, it's not an act. I'm smiling because I'm happy to be there, and I get a kick out of it. But I also know when I'm running around and making faces and shit, it's because that's the show that I want to put off. And a lot of times people aren't aware of the show that they want to give. And I've always known that. And I wasn't great at it always. I've gotten a lot better through the years. The first time we had played a big stage, I was terrible. Like because we went from playing clubs to then we played Download Festival, and that's a whole different form of showmanship. I was used to the stage is this big, and I run from here to here to here to here, and I had to learn how to do a big stage and work a stage with pyro and all that. Now I can kind of do any of it, and I'm happy with it. I don't need to have humility when it comes to knowing that I'm good at something. Do you think,
that they say kind of in stage stuff, they say like Friday night crowds are the worst because the people that come see performances and stuff are like, they're tired. They've been all the work week, and Saturday night crowds are more up. They had all day rest. Have you noticed that with like concert crowds too?
I never know what day of the week it is. So I couldn't tell you. I don't know. I don't. Our fans have been so cool for us personally, like as our band.
Yeah.
We've always, the things that are the conventions of what people say things are always go against what Black Veil Bride's fans do. And the reason that we've even become successful in the first place is because of that audience. And it really is, a lot of people say that and everything's for the fans. But this is a band that we couldn't even get shows. I mean, the Whiskey wouldn't book us, Viper Room, none of those. We had to play parking lots, and 300 people would show up in a parking lot. That's why we ever started, because people cared. We would come play shows, and Peabody's had in their big room, they had someone that was important at the time that I don't remember, but fell off the face immediately. But, at the time they were very important. So we were in the little room, and they had so many people spilling out of the little room that the big room was almost filled with people trying to get into the Pirates Cove area. Like, it's always been that I can talk a big game because I know that our fans will back it up. Nominate us for a fan voted award. Right. One year we won all of your AP awards.
Exactly. Yeah, no, you guys win a lot of awards if you're not at least nominated.
It's because the fans have always cared, and I think that the connection that we have with them, it's important and strong. A lot of times when people have a younger audience, they either grow to resent them because of their youth or their whatever, or their interest in other stuff, or they can never grow, and the audience will lose interest. And I think the one thing that our people sometimes talk shit about the younger kids, particularly the younger set of our audience. And by the way, now as we have grown as a band, our audience is broad a lot more. I look out and it's not the way it used to be. There's 50-year-old metalhead dudes, just like there's people in their 20s, just like there's younger kids. But when we first started, it was all predominantly younger kids. And I give our audience credit for being smart. They've grown with us. Our 3 records that we've released sound nothing like one another, really. Stylistically, it's the members of the band doing it, but we've been able to put out the kind of music that we want to, and our audience has grown. We've sold more records every time. We've gotten a bigger audience every time, as opposed to, some audiences where if a band changes something slightly, they're alienating the audience.
Sure.
But we've given our fans the credit of saying, you guys want this, stay with this. And they have.
We see this a lot with... you'll see bands kind of come out of the Warped Tour crowd or the Hot Topic crowd or whatever, AP crowd, and they'll try and go over into Pitchfork world, try and go over to Spin world, to try and go over to AV Club world, start to be taken, broaden it out. Right. And those people go like, what, you're a Hot Topic band? Yeah. And they dismiss them. So how do you think for you guys, were you able to do that?
I've never considered what those different audiences are. I've never once thought, I wonder if this will alienate the Revolver audience if we do. I've always just saw it as if we're a rock and roll band, I would like all forms of rock and roll people to pay attention, and if they like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. To be honest with you, there is, and it's been written in AP before, that Black Veil Brides is trying to appeal to a more rock on the range audience. I don't know what the hell that means, because to me, a rock on the range audience, I look out and still see 3/4 of the audience are the people that are coming to our shows when we were on the AP tour. Like, it doesn't. We've always been the kind of band that I don't think people know how to pigeonhole us. And there's a lot of bands, and I know I can think of, I'm not going to say them, but I can think of specific examples of bands that were on the cover of AP magazine and were headlining Warped Tour, and then said, okay, well, we don't need that anymore. Right. We're going to be, we're never going to go back to that world. We're going to do this thing. And then, like a year later, now they're opening on a first of 5 for Papa Roach or whatever. And I don't think we ever want to make a move in any direction. I just want to people want to pay attention. I'd love that. I want to keep making the music that I make. I don't want to make a shift to a specific form of media or a specific audience, because if I personally don't care about that, because I would go and see a band like, Bullet for My Valentine as much as I would go and see a band like, I don't know, Aiden or something, you know what I mean? Like, and those are obviously in terms of appeal very different, but they've toured together in the past, and I think that there are certainly ways of crossing all that stuff. I'm not saying we're going to be the band that's going to cross all the things, but I think it's just not caring about directing your audience. I don't want to tell them what to do. I don't want to tell people what they should like, because that's what has been done to me my whole life. And I've always been told, well, you wear those tight pants, you probably like this. Right. And I don't particularly,
Well, it is something to be said that I think humans like to be able to categorize things, because it makes it easier for them to understand it
We're
faster.
categorized as the makeup band that everybody hates by a lot of people, and then by other people we're categorized as the band that helps people, and then we're categorized. But we're obviously very divisive, but no one really knows why they hate us until, like, there's only, I would say that of the people who really dislike Black Veil Brides, 5% of them have ever listened to the music or know anything other than the press shot for Set the World on Fire. It's true, and it's amazing to me. And I'm not saying that our music is infallible. You could easily listen to our songs and dislike it, but I don't think people even take the time to do that, which is the most fascinating thing about this band, is that for some people we matter so much, and we can be in the top 5 consistently on active rock radio now, and we can #1 song on Slacker radio for weeks and weeks and weeks, and people that don't even know that they like our songs, and then they hear the name or they see that Set the World on Fire picture of us with the hair and the studs and everything, and they're like, that's the faggy makeup band, and they know nothing about it. When you hear sentences like bands like Black Veil Brides and Blood on the Dance Floor, what do you mean by that? Bands like that. I'd love to know what someone means by that. And to me, it goes, I see a young kid that has a Black Veil Bride shirt on and a Blood on the Dance Floor bracelet, and that kid likes it because they like the aesthetic. I don't know anything about Blood on the Dance Floor, but I know I've heard. They are not musically anything like this band. The dude had hair. He has hair that kind of looked like my old hair. That's really the only thing I can add to that. They wear makeup. I don't think that there's any other, but it's a thing where you can draw that comparison immediately. You can go, I don't like those things. So you would never bother to listen to one or the other. And there are some people, again, not to try to put my band above another, but if you might like you might hate the heavy metal stuff. You might have heard our music, and you might like the kind of electronic stuff that some of these other bands do. You are not allowing yourself the opportunity to find any of that if you immediately lump it in. But people get mad at aesthetics. They go, oh, fans of Black Veil Brides, because they only like, and Ronnie and I were talking about this, they only like something that's visual. And I go, when you were 12, did you like the Ninja Turtles because of their genius message and meaning, or did you like the way they looked and you wore the shirt and you had the action figures? Right. It doesn't bother me if a young kid finds Black Veil Brides and likes us, and then they also like something that I particularly don't like. I don't listen to Blood on the Dance Floor's music, but I'm not going to get mad at a kid who likes both of those things, because they might, aesthetically, that might be something that's interesting to them. And I think it's ridiculous when either fans of music or musicians themselves have such high and mighty opinions on things that they draw that distinction on their own. That's not up to them.
Do you feel like sometimes the pressure's on too much to be worrying about the aesthetics? Just kind of bum you out as a songwriter? And
no. And I think you and I talked about this when I was younger too. I've never paid much mind to it. I always knew that the band would evolve. I knew that we wouldn't be looking the same or doing the same thing forever, because I get bored with that. I can't keep my hair the same color. I tried to go back to my natural color for work. I can't do anything that long. I have to come up with a new thing. I'm already drawing what I think the band should do next and what the concept for, so when people saw the band, and by the way, that time period that we looked that way, the Set the World on Fire era that everyone kind of attaches, the Fallen Angels video, that was actually a shorter time period than even the way that the band is currently looked.
Right.
But that was such a distinctive image, and it was so different than what else was happening that it became the all-encompassing image for the band.
Well, it's the first impression.
Right. And that's fine with me, because I still stand behind that. People go, oh, isn't it ridiculous they used it? And no, for what that was, that was the style for what that band was. And I'm happy that existed, because I don't think without that there would have been that foot in the door to shock people and wake people up and go, what the hell is this? A lot of people saw that and they did listen to music because of it. And a lot of people saw that and they didn't. I could give a shit either way, really. People saw it, and that's fine with me. I have never been in the business of being interested in trying to, I'm not Marilyn Manson. I don't want to offend people's moral whatever. But if someone sees an image of the band and they're so interested in it, it could affect me positively. They could go, what the hell is that? And then they hear a song that I wrote and they go, wow, that's cool. Inversely, that could be that they, for the rest of their lives, hate us, and they make fan pages about hating us or whatever on Facebook.
Right, and sadly. You've met a lot of people, and I'm sure you've met a lot of idols. Is there any idol you haven't met yet?
Paul Stanley. I've never, and then purposely.
Really?
He's, to me, in my estimation, I think Paul Stanley is the most important driving force behind Kiss, and I think most people that really look at what the band is, Gene has always kind of been he's the media guy and everything. And the time that I ever met Gene Simmons was with cameras on him anyway, so I don't really know what he's like.
So you don't know what he's
I met him for his show, and it was me and the band, and it's good to see it coming back and whatever. So I have no idea what he's really like, and I don't care to. Some people I've met have been disappointing, and some people have been great. The people that are now like Sebastian Bach and Dee Snider and are friends and people that give me advice, and Nikki Sixx as well. We started out with kind of an interesting relationship, but it's developed into something where now he and I text on a regular basis. I go in and do his radio show all the time, and we're friends now. It's really cool in that regard. I put off meeting Danzig until this year. I had mutual friends and everything. I was like, I never want to meet him. I don't care. I've heard the stories. But thank God for the way that I met him this year was through the Golden Gods. I was the guy who, I don't think that if he was going to respect anyone in that room, there was nothing that could have happened that was more like punk rock to his ideas than me screaming at an entire audience full of people waving a statue at them. So that was like, I got to meet that kid. So that's the way I got to meet him. And he was, you're the fuck you guy.
If you're going to meet one of your idols,
so
that's
nice.
the way to meet him.
He and Doyle, they were very, took pictures and whatever, and that was fun because I had Nick from Aiden, who had never met any of them, and obviously Aiden was hugely influenced by the Misfits and everything, and I brought him along and my bass player, and we took pictures with Doyle, and it was awesome.
Like you said, you've got friends now that some of these people that were your idols, and these people are iconic.
Will wasn't necessarily an idol to me, but
I wasn't thinking Will. I was thinking like
no, but I'm saying in my head, I was just thinking he wasn't. I didn't really know anything of Aiden, but William Control I found. And that's sort of the way that I discovered him. A friend of mine who was this girl who was kind of talking to him at the time, and like she was just kind of a band girl. She was like, oh, doing the same and whatever. And she sends me, this is right when the William Control album comes out. She was like, I know you love like, New Order and Sisters of Mercy and that kind of stuff. I think this would be right up your alley. And so she sent it to me, and I sent him a message on MySpace. I knew of Aiden, but I didn't know anything about him. I knew I didn't like them. Like, and I told him this before. I knew that the only reason I knew I didn't like him is because I was of the age where I hated everything, and he could have been the big. And
Will, and knowing Will, he'd probably respect you for that.
But I didn't. And also it wasn't. It was like the things that he wound up becoming disillusioned with were the things that I didn't like his band for. The reasons that he stopped, like, and it's unfair to say, but at the time, like, he was that kind of, I think Aiden became a lot better later in their career because I think like a record like Knives, if I would have heard that as a kid, that would have been my fucking favorite band. But right. I think like a lot of bands like us, if you listen to We Stitch These Wounds and that's your first impression, I think that you probably wouldn't understand where the band has gone. In the same regard, I only heard maybe in passing Aiden's first song, and that wasn't what they were going to become. So I just didn't like it, whatever. I wrote it off. So I listened to the William Control record, and I sent him a message on MySpace. I just go, hey man, I'm really excited to see something like this happening. I know I've heard of your previous band before. I'm kind of an upstart band called Black Veil Brides. If you ever see us around, it'd be nice to have a conversation with you. I really, I kind of get the influences. I was like, Christian Death and all this stuff that I get where you're coming from. Nice to see it happening. And he wrote me back like 10 minutes later, freaked out that some fucking like what looked like MySpace, like whatever scene kid, whatever he's thinking in his head, writes back and it's writing him a message about New Order, or, all this kind of stuff. And so he was like, whoa. And from that moment on, he became one of the only people who was an advocate to me. He and Mick Morris from 18 Visions were like the two people who were already successful in some capacity that when I was coming up would tell people like, no, this band is great and this kid's got something. And if it wasn't for particularly, for Will really did, he would fucking fight for me in the early days. Like he was willing to go to bat. I mean, literally we got into fights with bands and together beat the shit out of bands, like because of people making fun of the makeup that we wore and stuff. Because I think he took us as, when he was starting Aiden, the shit that he got, he didn't want another band to have to get that. Because, in a way, he didn't want to do that anymore, so he kind of gave up on what Aiden was. He made the Conviction record, and he'd stopped with the makeup and everything, and he wanted to move past that. And I think he almost saw Black Veil as a second chance to kind of do that stuff and be involved in that. And if it wasn't for him in the early days, he was really a huge person that shaped my career as an artist and a musician. And I always tell him that. And to this day, I see him all the time. I was just at his house. I did a voiceover because he was the dude on my last record. So now I'm the voiceover guy on his new record he just did.
What's the best piece of advice you've gotten from any of these guys?
The best piece of advice that Will gave me recently was don't. It's so funny. I told him, I was like, I've been really thinking about musically. I've been writing some different stuff. I got together with Ronnie recently and we did some stuff and just different kinds of music that I had never gotten to write before. And I was just thinking, like, I was just sitting, just me and Will talking as friends. And I'm like, I really want to get into writing different kinds of music. And he was like, don't fuck up Black Veil Brides. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, whatever you do, write whatever you want. Don't write music that's gonna fuck up your band. He's like, that's what I did, and I lost a lot. Don't want to see that happen to you. And it wasn't my intention, but I never really thought about it that way. And I guess I always have to keep it in the back of my head that I don't want to ruin whatever my band's dynamic is because I want to be what I want to be. And having said that, I think that I can walk that line creatively where I can still do what I want to do, because I always have, but separate it and do it kind of in my own way.